The 1949 Chevrolet was a revolutionary car for General Motors, so why don't people care about it today? Hi there, Rick DeBrule, another chapter in the automotive evolution. Once again, I am here at the Martin Auto Museum. It is a wonderful collection of cars right here in Phoenix with more than 170 on display and plenty of significant milestones part of this collection, like this car right here, this 1949 Chevrolet. It's really important. Now we'll talk more about this car in just a moment, but first make sure you like and subscribe down below, and in the comments make sure you tell me what I got right, most importantly what I got wrong. There's always something I got wrong. And do you have a story about riding around one of these? Did you own a 49? Now let's talk about this 1949 Fleetline Deluxe. 1949 was a huge redesign year for Chevrolet. And yet today, a lot of people look at this car and go, okay. It's important to understand that the 1949 Chevrolet was a big deal when it came out. It was the first all-new post-war Chevrolet with a modern body, new chassis, and styling that finally moved the brand past the pre-war designs that lingered all the way through the late 40s. Now at the time, it was fresh looking, it was forward looking, even a little revolutionary for its day. So why do so few people remember or care about this car today? Well, the answer mostly comes down to what happened just a few years later. By 1955, Chevrolet had introduced a completely new lineup with a completely redesigned style, that modern slab style, a brand new revolutionary V8 under the hood. We call them the Tri-5s, 55s, 56, 57. They were sleeker. They captured the imagination of a whole new generation of car buyers. The 1949, well, it suddenly looked really dated by comparison. All right, before we talk too much more about this, let's talk a little bit about post-war Chevy history. Now, some of the smaller companies like Hudson and Kaiser launched their new styling in 47 and 48. Ford and Chevy did not introduce a new body, an all-new car, until the 1949 model year. And even then, Ford beat Chevy to production, to market, months and months earlier with their 49 model. But while Chevrolet was a bit tardy, they delivered a new car that the company could build a future with. Now, from a styling perspective, it was much different. It had those big front fenders that were gone, that were sticking out on the side. It was much smoother and sleeker, molding onto the hood. And it was all new underneath as well. Chevy introduced a new chassis. Now, it was similar in size to the 48 model, but it had much better handling. Plus, it had a lower floor pan, which meant more interior room without increasing the height of the car. Now, there were two different body styles that were available. You could either get a Style Line or a Fleetline. The Style Line had a more traditional sedan look, with the roof sitting on top of the body, while the Fleetline had a fastback look. Let's take a closer look at the revolutionary styling of our 1949 Chevrolet. This is a Fleetline. We'll talk about that styling in just a moment. But first, the most significant thing really was up front. The fenders were changed completely. If you look at a 1948, the fenders look like they're tacked on to the side. Now, what they've done is they've integrated the fenders into the side look and importantly, into the hood. Notice how it comes through this little valley section right here, rises up. The hood still rises up above, similar to 1948, but 1948 it was actually kind of tacked on with the fenders tacked on here. Now it's an integrated, smooth, flowing piece. Obviously, this will get lower and lower over time, especially when you look at the 1955 model when they flatten that out completely. But when you look at the side of the car, that's when it's completely different again. The fender's not just tacked on, now it's integrated into the side. It's one flat plane going all the way down the side of the car. It's a very sleek look. It does have what we call pontoon fenders on the back, these units that come out and cover the rear wheels. Now, it's important to point out that Ford in 1949 came out with a completely different concept. They had a slab side. Some people call them the shoebox Fords, where the fenders did not stick out. It was flat all the way back. But Chevrolet stuck with this design all the way through 1954. 1955, of course, they would change that. And I sometimes wonder if that's another reason why this car, not as popular as time went along, because it had such an old style fender right here. This is the Fleetline look. Once again, that fastback styling. Interestingly, not quite as popular as the Style Line. Now, I have to point out that here at the museum, in addition to this 1949 Chevrolet, we also have a 1948 Cadillac. And if you take a look at that 1948 Cadillac, you can instantly see exactly what Chevrolet was going for. They wanted their car to look as similar as possible to that expensive Cadillac. And I really think they nailed it. Now, once again, this has all the little extra goodies that you could ask for, plenty of chrome. We've got a wind shade up here, or sunshade up here. We've got extra mirrors. We've got the little extra wind touches right there. Plenty of chrome, plenty of bling, because that's what they wanted to give. And as the 50s came along, bling and Chevy, well, those words were synonymous. While the styling may have been revolutionary, the windshield was still the classic two-piece unit. It was easier to do. Now, it wasn't two flat pieces. As you can see, it was curved on the side, but it was still easier to make two smaller pieces rather than one big. They wouldn't go to a single wraparound windshield until 1953. You know, when Chevrolet introduced its all-new cars for 1949, the styling, the chassis were completely fresh, but under the hood, well, things looked really pretty familiar. Powering the 1949 Chevrolet was basically the same dependable inline six that had carried the Chevrolet brand starting in 1929. You know, that original 1929 engine had 194 cubic inches and just 50 horsepower. But what made it significant was that overhead valve design. By 1949, the stove bolt 6, as people called it, had grown to 216 cubic inches and had 90 horsepower. You know, the stove bolt name came from those small bolts on the side of the engine that looked like they belonged on a stove back then, thus the name. Now, it's important to point out that there were really plenty of cars available back then that had flat head engines. So the overhead valve layout continued to give Chevrolet an edge. That's why they stuck with it. There's no question, though, it was not a performance motor, but it did have a reputation for being durable and easy to repair. Two things that mattered a lot to families buying cars in those post-war years. Chevrolet paired the engine with either a 3-speed manual transmission, or starting the year after this one, in 1950, you could get the optional Power Glide automatic. But in 1949, it was still all about the manual gearbox and the inline six, which is probably another reason that this car gets left behind. One thing I want to point out is this thing right here, a windshield washer reservoir, a bottle for containing the fluid you needed to clean your windshield with your wipers on a dusty day. This started to become an option for Chevrolet and General Motors in the late 40s. As you can see, it was a glass bottle, so it could easily break on a rough road, but this was the beginning of modern convenience right here, the windshield washer bottle. The interior of our 1949 Chevrolet got an upgrade as well. For 1948, the dash had a flatter look to it, really more of a horizontal layout. The speedometer oddly slightly off-center from the steering wheel and integrated into the dash, flatter. Now, when you go to 1949, the speedometer is now centered over the steering wheel and bulges up over the dashboard. And the dashboard itself, well, it curves downward, more of a vertical alignment. And I particularly like the radio in this. Not only is it vertical, but I love the way it's actually curved with the dashboard, flowing down to the bottom of the dash. You know, the overall look of this dash and this interior was more modern. It was sleeker. And the new chassis also meant a lower floor and a wider body, which translated into more interior space and comfort. Even better. By the way, I have to mention that the one we have here at the museum has been spectacularly restored. We only got it in the past year, and whoever had this before did a spectacular job getting it back on the road. Because they were late getting started, 1959 was a short production run for Chevrolet. Even so, they still managed to sell 1.1 million cars and trucks. They had some subtle design changes over the next few years. 1953 in particular saw a pretty big update. Chevy celebrated its 50th anniversary with a one-piece windshield, like I mentioned, and a cleaner body design. But back to our original point. This generation of Chevrolet just doesn't have the huge following today compared to what came in 1955. You know, the Tri-5 Chevys, the 55, 56, 57, arguably one of the most significant U.S. cars ever made. Completely different on the outside than this, and under the hood of that 55, a brand new V8. The moment the 55 hit the streets, this car just looked old, especially today. But the truth is, the 1949 Chevrolet really laid the groundwork for everything that followed. It was the bridge between the pre-war designs and the muscle and style that defined the 1950s. But because the 1955 Chevrolet had such a wow factor with that V8 and its clean, bold lines, The 49 has pretty much been overshadowed and, to be honest with you, mostly forgotten by enthusiasts and collectors alike these days.